Hey guys, Tom Moran here from Tom's Big Spiders. This is going to be the footage from the incei communal housing. Anybody that's watched the last video knows I got an amazing box of goodness from Fear Not Tarantulas off of a trade. The first video features my Poecilotheria metallica communal. I had 10 slings and I put them all in one container, and it's just going to be amazing. And if you want to watch a debacle of the housing, there's where you want to go. And also in that box, Rachael Pan, friend of mine, and amazing YouTube channel, Rachel's Eight-Legged Wonder. She's just starting out, but she's got a great way of approaching it, and with a background in biology, she's quite smart about how she does things. She sent along 5 slings from her recent clutch of inceis, so we're going to go ahead and set those up as a communal as well. So I'm going to stop talking now. We're going to go off to the video, and I'll have some words at the end. All right, so here we are with the rehousing video. Again, I did start to do commentary on this one, and about halfway through I turned to Billy and I'm like, I'm too exhausted to do this, because this one was shot after we rehoused the Poecilotheria metallicas, which was a rather long and stressful endeavor. So unfortunately there's no live commentary on this one, but it allows me to sit down and do the commentary when I'm a little fresher, which I think will make for better commentary. So anyway, if you read about incei communals, a lot has been said about them. This is one of the few species I believe we've observed in the wild living communally. But unfortunately, anyone doing their research will find that the success rate of an incei communal is spotty at best, and we're still trying to figure out what the key is to keeping these guys alive and well in a communal setup. Now, one of the common beliefs that's circulating around now about how to successfully start one of these is to basically take a mother and let her keep her egg sac and let the babies grow up with the mother. And people have had some success there. However, there's been other instances where people have started with slings from different sacs, who have separated the slings to begin with, and have had success. So we're kind of still trying to figure out how this one works, and I will admit that out of the 3 I have started now, between the M. balfouri, the P. metallicas, and this is the one I'm most concerned with. So people who are looking to set one of these up, I know they're obviously much less expensive than a balfouri or metallica communal, and again, we've seen them do it in the wild, so it should work. In theory, you need to be aware of the risks. There are ones, like I was reading a situation where a guy had 5 of them pretty much in a deli cup, exactly like we had here, and they did great, and they grew up, and they had babies, and he had another cup with 5 from the same brood in it, and apparently he ended up with 1 fat spider, and that seems to be a running theme throughout. Some people have great success. If you go into arachnoboards, there are several threads, some of which where people are saying you can only use babies that have been kept together, never separated, not even for shipping, and kept with the mother. Others where guys have refuted that, but the one general thing you can expect is you may have casualties with these guys. Unfortunately, that little booger's trying to get out there. Unfortunately, it seems like for them to start setting up these communals, unlike the balfouri where they're very social, they got to kind of ease into it, and that there are going to be some instances where there's some cannibalism. However, there are a lot of communals, if you pay attention and do the research out there, where apparently they do quite well, and they have many generations living in there. I looked up pictures of one last night, and a guy even went ahead and moved the communal into a new setup, and they were still doing well. They started webbing the entire enclosure up. It's really quite fantastic to see. So moving into this one, this is the one I'm most sketchy about, if I'm being completely honest. And if things don't look like they're going to go well, I obviously will separate them. I'm not about wasting spiders. But I do think that with a lot of people getting into the communals now, that it is kind of important to track what happens here, good or bad. At least, if anything, it's going to be an example to other people what to expect. But you do need to know going into it. I've had several people contact me like, oh man, I'm going to do an incei communal now. I keep saying H because it used to be holothely. That's been changed for a while, but it's stuck. A lot of people are contacting me saying they're going to start with one of these. You need to be aware that if you're expecting it to be as harmonious as the M. balfouri communal, that may not happen. You may have a perfectly great communal setup where everybody does well and all the ones you put in there live to adulthood and they start to breed, which is fantastic. Apparently the females will grow very quickly and can actually breed with the males, unlike other species like the M. balfouri. The first one that I had that matured was the females were not ready for it. So that's something to think about. So you could have a situation like that. You could have a situation where you have casualties. And for a lot of people, that's going to be not worth the risk. And I completely understand that. However, I do believe that with some of these communal species, it is fascinating to see them in action. It is an amazing event as far as watching them grow and interact. And I think there's a lot that can be gleaned from setting one of these up. So I think I can understand both sides, because I'm pretty certain the M. balfouri is well recognized as being a species that does well, so I didn't catch a lot of flack on that. I'm pretty certain there are going to be some people coming out doing the, well, congratulations, you're going to have one fat sling type thing, which is fine. I expect that and I understand it, but I think in this situation they were given to me as a communal setup. I know exactly where they came from. They were only separated in transit, and so far they're doing really well, so we're going to go ahead and monitor this and see how it goes. So here we go. There are 3 of them there. As you can see, there's no friction. I think these 2 here will start doing a little touchy leg thing. There they go. That's kind of how they recognize each other, and the other one's like, oh, you're a spider, I'm going to leave you alone, and then these 2 kind of go at it a little bit, and then everybody's kind of touching legs. No friction so far. And of course, we'll kind of have to monitor that as it goes. One thing I plan on doing is keeping them very, very well fed, but even then, I've heard of instances where folks have dropped in a bunch of roaches and everything, and they've still found one feasting on a sibling. So again, something to note. I'm not trying to be negative with this one. I always try to be realistic. It is something in the back of my mind, and we will monitor it. But people who plan on setting one of these up, let's give this one a look, see what happens before you go jumping into buying your own, because I'd hate to have people say, well, Tom said it works, and then lose their whole communal. And here's some footage of the first feeding. As you can see here, there is one to the left that is currently eating its own little roach by itself. There's one to the right. Now, if you look to the right behind the one to the right, you can see the booty of the third one that is almost upside down. Those 2 are actually feeding on the same piece of roach. Basically what I did is got out some small red runners, pre-killed them, ripped them apart. You see, unfortunately, one over in the corner of the guts. It's kind of gross. Sorry about that. But killed them, ripped them apart, and put like 5 or 6 pieces around various places inside the enclosure. And these 2 ended up, you can see right there, on the same piece, eating together. And they're getting along fine. I actually was really worried about this one, because that one on the bottom is kind of in a precarious position, and they were getting to the point where they were almost done with that piece of roach, and I was like, what's going to happen when they get done to the end of it? Would it be like Lady and the Tramp with the piece of spaghetti, or would it be something along the lines of the one on top is just going to continue eating through the one on the bottom? But as it stood, they basically separated after this and were perfectly fine. So that was good first sign. Sorry for the jittery footage there. And now we can see there they are from the top. So you can see that one behind is almost completely upside down. It was not letting go of that prey at them. So much for putting in several different pieces so that they would be able to have their own piece. They seem to gravitate to the same general area. There's another one eating to the right off camera. And then one I'm not concerned about, but it already seems to have started webbing on the back side of this cork bark underneath it. It's got its own little burrow, so I'm hoping that one comes out and interacts with these guys more, because if it's formed its own territory and these guys don't know about it, who knows how that'll end up. And again, this seems to be one of the communal species, or quote-unquote communal species, that some people have some fantastic luck with and others not so much. So I have that in the back of my mind the entire time while I'm doing this. But here we go, first feeding, and they seem to be getting along quite well, which is exactly what I wanted to see. And somebody comes out later on and cleans up some of that bigger piece of roach behind them, which is good. I went and took out the boluses this morning, and everybody's in pretty good shape still. And in just a moment, we're going to have a little bit of a transition where I came back in a little bit later. And you can see there's another one that's got a piece right there, which is great. That one's eating as well. And you can see the other one behind. Maybe that's the one that eats that big piece of roach. But yeah, again, they were getting along fine. I was a little concerned with the 2 that were on the same piece of food, because eventually the food was going to run out, but there were no issues. Now, what I will probably do going ahead is feed them probably 2 to 3 times a week. And I like putting in stuff that's a little larger. I do have small red runners I can drop into the tiny ones that they can probably hunt on their own. But to start off, what I want to do is get them as fat as possible, as quickly as possible. Because if they get nice and fat quickly and go into pre-molt, they're not going to be trying to prey on each other. So that's in the back of my mind again with this species. So we're going to do the best to keep them fat and well fed, so that the opportunities for them to cannibalize each other just don't even have an opportunity to occur. And you can see there's one in back eating a piece as well. There is also one right under the piece of cork bark in there. So far, this morning I went and checked on them, and one of them ran around and was in there with them and then came back out. So it doesn't seem like they're, creating their own territories, which is good because that's not what we want. We want them to live together. If they do start striking out and forming their own territories, that's when you can get some conflict and unfortunately dead spiders. So fingers crossed they settle in together nicely, and we'll keep an eye on them. All right, that'll about do it for that one. Thanks so much for watching. Now, just a word, I just did a podcast on my thoughts on communals, and I implore people, if you have the time or if you like podcasts, please check it out. I'll put a link in the bottom, like around here, maybe in the description. But one of the things you need to keep in mind is, although we see pictures of communals on the internet and in videos on YouTube, there is always a risk involved. These are they're wild animals, and unfortunately, wild animals, there'll sometimes be friction. So even in some of the best communals where they're actually working well, you can always have a death or a fatality. So it's something you got to keep in mind, and I think that's why a lot of people don't like to set these up. In my case, I'm very interested to see how they behave. These are two species between the Poecilotheria metallica and the N. inces that a lot of people have had success with, but particularly with the N. inces, it seems like there are some issues with them once they start getting older. However, I go back to that old original video I saw years ago, of footage of an H. incei communal. They were H then, with several generations living in the same tank. It was beautifully decorated, and it was the first time I actually even learned that they had communal tarantulas, or tarantulas that could be raised communally. So we'll see how this one goes. Again, we're going to observe everything. It'll be just like the M. balfouri, where I try to catch him at least once a month or so and post stuff up so people can make informed decisions for themselves. I'm hoping both of them go very well. I'm watching these little guys now. So far, so good, but anything could change at any time. So we'll keep you updated on that. Again, thanks so much for watching. If you haven't checked out any of my videos before, I'm going to put the Poecilotheria metallica housing of the communal over here. I'll put another video over here. Please check out Rachael up here, and then I'm going to put myself up there. Trying to time these things is kind of a pain in the butt sometimes. So anyway, I'm done for now. Catch you next time.